In the 2010s, Europe was plunged into austerity based on a spreadsheet mistake. The economists Reinhardt and Rogoff had come up with this formula that showed that if debt to GDP was above 90%, then you would cripple the economy. And so based on this, the various authorities went full steam ahead with austerity to try to avoid debt going above 90%. However, the spreadsheets that this was based on were analysed and shown to be faulty. The austerity was not necessary, and the terrible fallout, such as basically the bankruptcy of Greece and enormous youth unemployment in southern Europe, was completely unnecessary. And this highlights a real problem with spreadsheets, which is that they are amazingly powerful, but also extremely easy to get wrong. And they did eventually publish some sort of a retraction. But funnily enough, opinions vary on how wrong they were. So for example, this study thinks that it's not 90% but 30%. And here's another one from the International Review of Economics and Finance. And their conclusion is, this leads us to conclude with reasonable confidence that Reinhardt and Rogoff were right. So who's right, who's wrong? I'm not here to answer that question. I just want to point out that with Excel spreadsheets, you need to do testing. And so here we have a very simple contrived example. You can see we've got some items here, we've got their values, a discount being applied, and the amount of kilos. The result of the discount, and then the total, multiply the kilograms by that. And it all looks perfectly fine. Except that if we do a test on this, and so here's my test sheet, you can see this red coloration going on here. It looks very alarming. That's because we have used synthetic data to do the test, and we know what the result should be from the synthetic data. The synthetic data is sufficiently simple, so we can pre-calculate it. And when we put that in and we have our test table here, we can highlight in red using conditional formatting that there is a problem. And in fact, the problem is that the discount formula is incorrect. We are simply subtracting the percentage from the original value, which is obviously completely wrong. But even in this case, let's say we correct this. So we might put B5 multiplied by the discount rate, C5, and then the number looks correct. And I'll copy this down, and everything's wonderful, except that we're not right. So this testing business can itself be a subtle problem in that we've chosen 50% to reduce the value to 100 to make the calculation very simple. But that means that we can actually have a formula here which the naive might think was correct. But because it was a 50% value, then the result ends up being right, even though the formula is wrong. So sometimes if it's particularly critical, you need tests of the tests. But this is a whole huge subject in its own right, and what I would urge you to do is feed your spreadsheets into the AIs and ask them to come up with a strategy for testing, and also study the subject. AIs can only do so much. Ultimately, they have to be supervised, and you need to know what you're doing. If you like this content, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and there's going to be more coming.